Hello and welcome back to another video. For today's video, I'm actually going to be doing a booktube related video because, so you may or may not know, I'm in the Indonesia's booktube community. What is booktube? If you don't know what booktube is, it's basically just a YouTube community that posts about books. So I think booktube itself is self-explanatory. So there's a community that likes to talk about books, that like to read books, and they share and make videos about books. And I used to do that a lot because I love to read, if you don't know that. And I still do, but I just don't read that much, so I don't have a lot of content about books pumping out. But Booktube Indonesia always has this monthly theme where they post the same topic of a video. For example, like this month's theme is what's your favorite book genre? So everyone in the community is posting, in Booktube Indonesia is posting about what is their favorite book genre and why. So my plan for this video is that I'm going to tell you why I like this book genre, and then I'm also going to give you some recommendations for beginners, or maybe just some random book recommendations if you are curious to dive into the genre that I'm about to tell you why I love it. So my favorite book genre is actually fantasy. I don't care whether it's urban fantasy or like high fantasy. I'll tell you the difference afterwards. But I just love fantasy in general. I love things that deals with magic. I love things that deals with like mystical creatures like werewolf, vampires, fairies, witch, wizards, and stuff like that. I find it so fascinating. Even in the Marvel universe, my favorite character is Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange, so that is pretty much self-explanatory why I love fantasy and magic. Just now I told you there are two fantasy sections, or fantasy sub-genres, which are urban fantasy and also high fantasy. Urban fantasy is actually a fantasy storyline or fantasy world that takes place in our world. For example, like you may or may not know the Mortal Instruments, which is an urban fantasy that takes place in like New York. The magic storyline happens in our own world. Another easy storyline is actually Percy Jackson, which their story, their magical creature, their magical mythology story happens in Manhattan or like DC, I forgot, but it happens in the United States, so always in America. While high fantasy is a fantasy storyline that takes place in a different universe that is not in our world. For example, Sarah J. Maas's Throne of Glass, or even like A Court of Thorns and Roses. This book takes place not in our world. Like, it's not like we don't have countries here. Like, they have their own world, they have their own country, they have their own rules and rulers and stuff like that. They have continents and stuff, but it's completely different from our world. So I guess that's the two main differences between high fantasy and urban fantasy. Which one do I like more? I'm not sure, but I think I'm leaning towards the urban fantasy one, because urban fantasy once again takes place in our universe. I like it because I guess it gives you that more relatable aspect, like, oh, magical stuff happening in our own society. Cool! And I think now I'm going to give you guys recommendations for both high fantasy and also urban fantasy, so stay tuned. Okay, well, the light's a little bit intense, but we'll go with it, yeah? So my recommendation for urban fantasy is actually a very simple one. So the first book, or like the only series actually I'm going to show you, is The Lightning Thief, Percy Jackson by Rick Riordan. I think this is the perfect book to start off into the urban fantasy world because it's very light written, it's very funny, it's very easy. The fantasy aspect isn't that complicated, so for a beginner it's easy for you to understand the complex world of fantasy. And also it is Greek mythology based, which is so good. I think I fell in love with Greek mythology because of this series. Thank you, Rick Riordan. And after I read the series, I did continue with his other series. I continued Rick Riordan's series called The Heroes of Olympus. He has like a lot of mythology based novels which are like, I think, like actually for children, but they're really good. I personally enjoy them, so I really recommend you this entire series to start off. I only have 4 books and I haven't finished the series because I don't have the 4th book and I'm picky when it comes to covers, so it's only like 200 pages. Trust me, it's a really good book to read. So now I'm going to show you guys the high fantasy recommendations, which I have actually I have 2 series that I really want to recommend you guys. Why was that so hard to say? The first series that I really want to recommend you guys is the Falling Kingdom series by Morgan Rose. This book is so high fantasy, but I love it so much. This has a kick-ass, amazing-ass world. It's a beautiful universe. The way she created her Falling Kingdom's world, it's amazing. I really, really love it. And I love the magic aspect in this book. Oh, the magic system and the magic storyline in this book is so good. I am such a big fan of it. Although I did not finish it because I could not find the 5th book in Indonesia. It's so hard to find international books in Jakarta sometimes. But yeah, anyways, I recommend you guys to read it. It's such a good high fantasy. Like, when you want to read high fantasy, this is definitely a high fantasy novel. Just a lot of romantic tension. There's a lot of badass magic fighting scenes, there's a lot of assassins, a lot of weird political kingdom kind of issues, which I really love. Like, come on, Game of Thrones, hello. So I definitely recommend you guys to definitely read this series. Okay, and the last series for high fantasy that I really want to recommend is very simple. I think a lot of people would agree with me on this series because personally I love this trilogy so badly. It is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. This is a very high fantasy book surrounding on fairies, but they're not like your typical pink, pixie, colorful fairies. No, I mean they're technically colorful because, you know, different places and countries. But this is very, I would say, dark fantasy realm. This is a little bit dark because there's a lot of blood and like murder, and yes, this book is a little bit more for like young adults above, but if you're a teenager and you want to read it, go ahead. I was a teenager when I read this, so like but yeah, I recommend you guys read it. It's really good. My camera's about to die, fuck. And also I just want to show off the covers of the other series. It's really pretty. The world is very, once again, like Fallen Kingdom, it's very big and massive. There's so many mystical, magical creatures that are like scary but also like really exciting and interesting to read. I think you guys should definitely give this a go. It's not that long. It's like what, 400 pages? Yeah, 400 pages. It's so good. I recommend it to you guys so badly. You have to read this. I love this trilogy so much. But yeah, that is my favorite genre and my recommendation. Also comment down below if you have any fantasy book recommendations because I would love to expand my fantasy book collection because hello. Yeah, that is all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, comment, subscribe, you know the drill. Follow my social medias if you're interested, and I'll see you next time on my next video. And yeah, bye.